joining me now is Talk TV contributor Esther Krakow and a trembling broadcaster and journalist, Jenny Kleeman, visibly recoiling in horror. Let's start with you, Jenny. He's not your idea of a role model.
Well, no, he's not. I see him as a symptom of a problem rather than a solution to it. I can understand why...
What's the problem that he's the symptom for?
The problem is that I think a lot of young men feel that nobody is speaking up for them. In a culture where we are encouraged to have identity politics, the only identity that isn't a good identity is a young man or a young white male. He talks in a very straight way and he gives straight answers to some questions, which I think he gives very wrong answers to. But I find him repellent. I think he talks about... He basically creates straw men that he destroys. So he will depict feminism as a particular kind of thing, a kind of man-hating thing, which it isn't.
Well, it is to some feminists.
For a small number of feminists,
I mean, there are some radical feminists who genuinely hate men.
There definitely are. But most people know that feminism is about just thinking that everyone should have equal opportunities regardless of...
Yeah, and one thing we know from Afghanistan, and these heartbreaking scenes today in Afghanistan of weeping female students who couldn't go to university, and men actually in Afghanistan then going out in protest for them. I mean, really heart-rending scenes, Esther, here of these young women in Afghanistan weeping because they've been told they cannot now continue their education. And then you've got male students walking out in protest. Very brave thing to do. A bit like we saw in Iran with the men protesting in support of the women being oppressed there. This is where he slightly lost me last night, Andrew Tate. There are a lot of things he says which I understand why young men, you feel a bit lost, why they gravitate to his confidence. He's very good at building business. He's proven it. He's made himself extremely rich doing it. A lot of what he says about masculinity and stuff, I completely would sign up to, actually. Yeah. And his confidence can help people. But when he was not prepared to condemn
these
the
10th century
Taliban
barbarians
for that, because that to me is an open and shut case. If you don't condemn it, then I'm afraid you've got a problem. And it's not about sending feminists in to go to war. As I pointed out to him...
Which I actually do think is a valid point.
Well, it's fine, but a lot of women do actually fight in the armed forces.
Yeah,
so the idea that none of them do is also nonsense.
I think he was using that to kind of attack the more extreme forms of feminism that says, you know, women can do anything a man can do. And he was using that as an example. Yeah. But I do think, you know, you lose people when you refuse to outright condemn sort of 10th century barbarians like this. But I don't think... When he said it has nothing to do with him, I think he's not willing to get into dicey territory in that way. But it's like you speak in such absolute terms. Why
Do you think
not?
he's a misogynist?
I don't think he's a misogynist. No, I don't think so.
I mean, a misogynist means somebody who hates women.
Yeah,
I don't think he hates women.
I do think he hates women. I think he thinks women are nothing. I think he would not know what to do with you and I, Esther, because he does not know how to deal. He gives interviews to people like you or to Hugo Rifkin. He'll give interviews to men.
But a lot of women I've spoken to about... Yeah, but a lot of women...
But he's done interviews with women. I've seen them before on YouTube. And he's very polite and respectful.
Yeah, women do. A lot of women do like him.
Exactly.
There are a lot of women who don't know him who seem to hate him, ironically. But I'm not sure it's as clear-cut as he's a misogynist.
I don't think he's a misogynist, and I have a brother who's probably within his target demographic, 23, and I can understand why his message would resonate with him, because it's normal. It's normal, exactly, for young men to feel like they don't have a place in Western society, and he actually makes that point. I just think when you don't want to outright condemn 10th century barbarians like the Taliban, you tend to lose your case with more moderate people. But again, we're not his target audience.
The fact that his understanding about what's happening in Afghanistan is that it's a feminist issue rather than a human issue.
I don't think he said that.
Well, no, he did. He said, send this feminists in. It's a human issue where we made all these promises to people in Afghanistan and then we left.
Well, let's be clear. We betrayed those women.
We absolutely betrayed Biden.
Joe
As a human being,
in the way we pulled out of Afghanistan overnight, and we betrayed not only people who work with us, the interpreters and so on,
but people
we
who
have left
died
millions of Afghan women have just been tossed back to these barbaric
and servicemen who died for it. But the fact that he sees it, he says, oh, it's got nothing to do with me. As a human being, it should have something to do with it. As someone who says he's a proud
I agree.
Brit, it should
I thought it was a cop-out there. But albeit, again, a lot of what he says, I could imagine if I was a young man, it would resonate with me, probably for the right reasons. I think he's trying to give people confidence and a belief that being masculine is not actually a stick to beat you with, right? You can be a good masculine person. He used to be applauded. Let's talk of somebody who I don't think is a shining example of this, Joe Lycett, who has spent the last month posturing away with his shiny moral halo about David Beckham being in Qatar and representing the Qataris in the World Cup and being paid for it. And then The Sun revealed yesterday a rather uncomfortable truth, which is that he had actually performed himself in Qatar, Abu Dhabi and Dubai in 2015, a series of stand-up gigs for money, Esther. Now, there's a word for this, and I call it hypocrisy.
Well, this is the thing. It's hypocrisy and it's cowardice, because he would say these things, but he wouldn't actually go to Qatar and sit on Qatari state television and say all these things. He can sit back comfortably and rage at their...
But his whole point was David Beckham shouldn't be there and shouldn't be fronting anything for the Qataris when this guy himself has taken it. And his excuse was so mealy-mouthed, Jenny. Oops, I've been caught by the sun. Well, yes, I did 2 gigs in Doha. Actually, it was 3 gigs in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Qatar. I kept it secret by writing about it in my own book. Well, no one remembers that from 7 years ago. I was paid a few £100, not keen to say exactly how much, not by Qatar, but by UK comedy promoters who were being paid by Qatar. But it was 2015, when Qatar's laws were exactly the same about homosexuality as they are today, and that went a lot further back then. And so he goes on, and then he says, well, no, but who should I take moral lectures from? Not from The Sun. OK, what aboutery? It's not about The Sun here. It's about Joe Lycett's hypocrisy.
I think it doesn't look good for Joe Lycett, but I would say that they're different things. The World Cup is about giving soft power on the global stage.
So is stand-up comedians
who
are...
Well, hang on. He was like nothing in 2015.
So are gay comedians going to a country which they profess to hate because it bans homosexuality. They're by going there, they are basically saying, I don't care. I'm pocketing the money. It's the same argument he used against Beckham.
I think with Beckham, it's to do with being an ambassador on the global stage for a country that is trying to elevate their profile. Joe Lycett in 2015,
if I said to you, it's the old thing of Churchill, was it Churchill and Bessie Braddock when he said he was drunk one night, he said, Madam, would you sleep with me for £1 million? And she said, would you sleep with me for £1 million? And she went, well, I don't know, Winston. And he said, well, would you sleep with me for £1? No, don't be outrageous. Well, look, we already established. He said, what kind of woman do you think I am? We know what kind of woman you are. We're haggling over the price, right? No, it was a joke.